Hi, my name is Angie Janovic, and I'm going to talk about Module 3 for our special education interviews in EDL 853. For our interviews, I spoke with a paraprofessional. This last school year, she was someone that worked in my general education 5th grade classroom. She worked a lot with one of our students with a behavioral IEP. And then I also discussed the interview questions with a special education teacher that I had worked with when I was teaching special education. So it was nice to have that discussion with her. And then I wasn't able to interview my building principal, but I spoke with another elementary principal. And it was interesting to see that those answers, for what I would foresee, would be pretty close because of the interactions and watching my principal work. There were a lot of similarities for what I believe would be important. So for the first question, the child find procedures, the paraprofessional was unaware of these procedures, which I totally expected that. Even as a special education teacher, I believe that most of the paras wouldn't be aware of those situations. A few of them that worked really closely with me may have known some of them, or at least the reasons why, or some of the process, like if I was redoing the schedule or switching things around, or some of the higher needs medical students had some of those needs they need to be trained on from professionals. So they may know a little bit about that process, but otherwise that wasn't something that they needed to be aware of. With a special education teacher, we talked a lot about the curriculum-based assessment, and that's what the special education teacher would use if we're going through an evaluation. They would look a lot of the classroom and compare that to the rest of the students in the classroom and how they compare with that. And then also MAP testing is it's a big deal. And I know it's one test, so we don't solely use that, but that's kind of on our radar to see, kind of a starting point to see those scores over time. But also we look at the child as a whole. That's just a good starting point, and to see and kind of look where they have fallen, if there's a pattern or not in that area. For administration, of course, they talked about definitely using data. Schools have the SAT process or SIT process, that student intervention or assistant team, depending on what your school calls it, at the elementary level, and the tier interventions that you use. And during that process, you get a lot of the data. So if it does go to evaluation, you have this data. Once you've decided to go to evaluation, or you're getting close to that, the school psych is usually involved, and there's probably some intelligent testing, and this is where the curriculum-based assessments come in. For the preschool, which we don't have preschool at our school or at the principal's school that I spoke to, but they did bring up some screeners that their district uses for early childhood, and then also the screeners for kindergarten and first grade, some of those phonemic awareness situations. Most challenging part, for the paraprofessional, learning how to click with students and motivate them, and just being aware of what maybe triggers them, or how to push them just enough, and just their little idiosyncrasies that they have and how to work with those. I saw that her response did not surprise me. I saw that a lot when I was a special education teacher. The paraprofessionals is really wanting to click with those students and help the best way they can. As a special education teacher, we talked a lot about wearing multiple hats, and that may look different depending on what your job is. But we talked a lot about how the scheduling was difficult to make sure all those kiddos are getting their needs, and also the paraprofessional schedule, and supporting and training them based on what the students need. So it basically came down to the hardest part is balancing the academic and behavioral and medical needs, and just balancing everything that you need to do for the students, and then collaborating and working with your team to make sure that you're doing the best you can. For an administrator, she talked about it coming back to time. There's just never enough time for them. It's balancing the administrative responsibilities, but also working and collaborating with the staff. They want to be a part of that. They want to be supportive. They want to know what's going on. So that's the most challenging part. And she also talked about, trust, being able to trust that special education team to go with it. When you're maybe not in that meeting right away, or you're doing that balancing act. The most rewarding part of special education from a paraprofessional, it was seeing that student, the I get it moment, where you've been working on it and it happens, they get it. And then she also talked about how she really liked it when she would be talking to a general education teacher and they would explain how the strategies that the para has shown them or worked with them on, how they're using it in the classroom and they're applying it and using it somewhere else for success. So those were moments that she really talked about, that she really liked. And I really liked talking to her because I expected the I get it moment, but I wasn't expecting her to talk about just collaborating with the general education teacher and hearing how it's working in the classroom. So I really appreciated hearing that. And I know we did have some of those discussions when she was in my classroom. So that was great. As a special education teacher, we talked about how, of course, you want to see growth. You want the student growth is what we're after. But it's more than that. It's seeing that student believe in themselves, that they can do it. I know the special education teacher I worked with, she also talked a lot about just the families, seeing them, a little relief with them, not so stressful. They're the most important thing in the world is that kiddo, and they're finally making some progress, and those goals and visions that they have for that kiddo may not be working quite as planned, but they're seeing something. So working with the families. And then one thing that has stuck with me is that I started as a special education teacher. So then when I moved into the classroom, I was able to have some of those kiddos in my classroom that I had as a special education teacher. And I remember having one kiddo that just did not enjoy school. It was a struggle for the family to even get him to school, and it was a lot of stress. And then after I had him in that 5th grade year, we made a lot of progress. We did some academically, but the most growth I saw was in his attitude and his participation, and just starting to see a spark. And the parent, I'll never forget that the parent told me at the end of the year that she was so excited because they had believed that he would drop out of school when he could. But now, after his 5th grade year and what we had been able to accomplish, she knew that he would finish. He didn't hate school anymore. He didn't mind coming to school anymore. So that was a moment that stuck with me. And so it's those moments. And my coworker had talked about some of those moments in meetings when you're sitting in that SPED meeting and you just feel the parent, okay, they're seeing success. For the administration, it was along those same lines, student success and then helping the families. But the one thing that she also brought up is the most rewarding part. One of the most rewarding parts too is seeing your staff come together and problem solve. And on a special ed team, you can have so many members and different areas, the OT, PT, outside agencies, and the teachers and the parents and advocates, and the school psych and the principals. They're seeing everyone come together, maybe not agreeing on everything right away, but able to problem solve and come back with a plan that's best for that student. So they talked about that being a really rewarding part leading to that student success. So for the supervision of special education staff, which includes a lot of people. You've got the special education teachers and OTs and PTs, all sorts of services, and the paraprofessionals, everyone working together. So the paraprofessional, she would like a plan in place to be able to check in with the SPED teacher more, to stay on track. even a daily morning check-in, something where they could communicate and figure out, okay, this is what we need to do today. This is what's going on. And I thought that was a great suggestion, because I remember as a special education teacher, there were mornings, there wasn't even time to like say good morning to the paraprofessionals. Okay, this change, here's the new schedule and this, and just going. And that wasn't conducive to really support them. And so sometimes it's the little things. As a special education teacher, we talked about having someone that could listen. Sometimes situations can be complicated. So someone that can listen, but also know the procedures. As a special education teacher, I could tell, you can tell the difference between a principal that understands special ed or someone that is just kind of like, okay, here, you deal with this, and they're going to do everything else. So to understand, appreciate, and work with you on those procedures, so collaborating. For the administration, they felt that an administrator needs to provide clear expectations. Just be upfront with that. You can't expect the staff to read your mind, so you have to give them clear expectations, but also support in what you're expecting them to do, and listen to their needs and what's going well, and just know what you need to do to help them get to where you want to go. So how do you work effectively with parents? The paraprofessional said that she didn't work directly with parents, which I was expecting that when I saw that question. So they said that they do provide their input to the special education teacher, or sometimes they fill out the daily charts, but they don't directly share information with the parents. And that, I remember, most of the time it's fine, but can get a little tricky, especially when you have a pair that works one-on-one with a student. They form a really close bond, and then at times the parent sees that, which is great. So they'll start going through, instead of going through the special education teacher, they may just be emailing or starting to just talk to the paraprofessional, and it needs to be continue to go through the special education teacher and making sure they're a team. So I completely understood her comment there. I had the feeling that, she wanted to be valued in her opinion, which definitely needs to be done, but to make sure everyone's on the same page. So for the special education teacher, we talked about that listening and respect. That this is the parent's kiddo. It's not just data in an IEP. You're not just reading numbers and talking about where that student is. You need to remember that this is their child that you're talking about. It's a person. So we need to be positive as we communicate. So the administrator talked about some of those same things, really being able to communicate and keep it positive. And then she also talked about making sure the team is on the same page. She understood that there's going to be changes in the meeting, and you want the parent to be a part of that team, but the school team needs to come in there at least not ready to argue. That stuff can be worked out beforehand if you're having some questions. And there are changes in the meeting and people bring up different things. But if there's any big issues that are going to arise, it's good to at least come into the meeting in a positive way to work effectively with the parents. So how do you work in a positive way and effectively with the general education teachers? The paraprofessional said that she really liked to check in with the teachers because they see the struggles in the classroom. They know, as a paraprofessional, she knew what she was supposed to work on from the goals or what the special education teacher gave her, but she also wanted some input from the classroom teacher as what they expected or needed from the teacher. So they knew how to best help. For the special education teacher, we talked about needing patience and collaborative time. Every general education teacher does it differently in their classroom. They run their classrooms differently, and that's great. And as a special education teacher, you kind of need to figure that out, to figure out how to best serve that student and help the paraprofessionals figure that out. Like, some teachers are okay with the paraprofessional kind of jumping in and being part of that teaching a little bit, and others, you wait and which is fine. We just need to find that balance. We talked about how times, I know we're, as a special education teacher, a lot of times you give that direct instruction and the parents will give support in the classroom, but we had really tried to work our schedule and rotate it so that we could get into the classroom also and even just observe, not to evaluate the teachers, but just to see what strategies and how the classroom was going so we could better help that situation and help that child succeed. For administration, they talked about, she talked about providing clear expectations and making sure that everyone understands the procedures, especially for the SAT or SIT processes. And the new teachers, they may not understand the paperwork or when you bring a child to the table to discuss anything or what tier they're on. So she really talked about making sure that staff knew how to do that. And then advice for a first-year administrator. The paraprofessional said that she would like an administrator to value her input as a paraprofessional, and to get to know them. She expressed that the principal gets to know the teachers, but may not always get to know the paraprofessionals at that same level, and they have a lot to share too, especially when they're working one-on-one with students. So I thought that was a very good point. As special education teachers, we talked about the administrator being knowledgeable, and it came up again about how you can tell the difference. And then being willing to just sit down and collaborate with the staff, provide clear expectations. You can come in from different districts or even different schools, and it may be run just slightly different. You're still following the laws and the expectations, but as a school building, there may be different expectations. So making sure that the administrator is clear on those. And then again, to support, listening and collaborating with them, that shows support. For administrators, she talked about how that first year, it's important to understand that you're all excited and you have these visions and what you're going to do in your procedures. Just remember that everyone may be getting there and willing to get there with you, but they may get there in a different way. So kind of really paying attention to that maybe they're not doing it exactly how you had visioned, but it's okay as long as we're getting to the same goal. Okay. And then we talked about the role of a special education teacher and a building principal. I thought this was an interesting question because as a special education teacher, you did work very closely with the principal. So the paraprofessional that I talked to, she said that the special education teachers were her first line of direction for the paraprofessionals. That's where they needed to go first. And they were support for the students. And then she said that the principal is that first final support for all students and staff. They had that final say. As a special education teacher, to answer that, it's the role is for student growth and to follow those IEPs for classroom success. And then the principal is ideally they're looking for student success, so their job is to give that teacher guidance and support to make sure that our kiddos are making that progress. For the administrator, she talked about how the special education teacher, it's their job to develop and implement the individualized instructional plans and ensure student growth and success. That seems to come up a lot, no matter what school you work at or what district or what state. That's what we're looking for. And she also mentioned how important it was to be able to work with others. There's a lot of collaborating and a lot of problem solving in special education. And then she talked about how the principal, the special education teacher is developing these plans, but it's the principal's job to develop and implement plans and procedures to support and guide the staff to be successful at their job. So, characteristics of an aspiring administrator. The paraprofessional, she explained that they need to be open-minded and knowledgeable, trustworthy and supportive, knowledgeable, Good communication, but assertive also. When it's time to step up, it's time to step up and do what's right. And looking for, we're all striving for growth as students. As a special education teacher, where the knowledge was important, and so being supportive, communication skills, being a problem solver. There's not always a black and white easy answer. We need to think outside the box sometimes. Passionate, data-driven, and student success. The administrator I talked to, she also talked about need to be supportive and clear communication. And also she talked about the importance of creating a positive environment, which will help engage that team in the willingness to work together and collaborate, and to stay student and family focused. And then, of course, in the special education, understanding the laws, but don't be afraid to ask. You're not going to know everything. So don't be afraid to ask if it's the school psych or the curriculum director or the special ed director, whatever you need, don't be afraid to ask. So in wrapping up these interviews, I thought it was very insightful to hear everyone's perspective, and it gave me a chance to even think a little bit more about my perspective. When you work, getting a chance to work in different positions, it was nice to think of how my perspectives have changed from a special education teacher to a general education teacher, or as a first year teacher, or as a 15th year teacher. So those different perspectives, that was nice to think about. I felt that the answers matched my experience as a special education teacher and thinking through that. And one thing I found is that the one thing that among others, but the one main thing that everyone had in common is that we all wanted student success. We were all there for the same reasons. And I think even if you asked other positions in the building, that's what we're there for. And again, we're not all getting there the same way sometimes, but that's what we're all looking for. Thinking about myself as an administrator, I feel like I understand and need to keep understanding how everyone is connected. Even in the building, we have different jobs, different titles, but our overall goal is the same, and our decisions, and we're all connected. Any decisions that is made, scheduling or teaching, or it affects others, and it affects those students, and it may affect another class. So just thinking as a whole, and not just, okay, this is what goes on in one teacher's classroom, because it may affect everyone. And I'll need to be knowledgeable of the procedures, and just know that's essential, and communicate those clearly, and then provide support and guidance. We're not going to get there unless we support each other, that student success. And the one thing that it came up in the interview when I think about a lot is balancing that. So time, balancing all the administrative and meetings and collaboration and everything you want to do with those teachers and instructionally and data, but also there's other things you need to worry about too. So just the time and balancing everything that you need to work on as a administrator. So thank you.